You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 481, our breakdown of two episodes that came back-to-back, The Clone Conspiracy and Truth and Consequences. And for anybody that was wondering whether or not we were going to get back on track with kind of the main theme of what was happening post-season 1 of The Bad Batch, these two episodes certainly delivered. We got a lot of things answered, and we got to see the fate of some stuff. Nice little twist at the very end that I wasn't anticipating. And I think we've course corrected in terms of, expectations about where this series is going to go. Could be wrong, but we'll discuss that here in a little bit. And we're going to do that with none other than I was going to call you the blacks, what's Ozzy's term?
Prince of Darkness. Prince of
Darkness. Thank you. And I completely botched that. But Jonesy.
No, really what you should have said was you're going to do a course correction now from you over to me because you don't know what I am anymore.
Right. I don't know who you are anymore. How you doing tonight?
I am doing well-ish. I came online thinking my internet was going to be nice and fine and everything, hardwired, and then all of a sudden it only wants to connect on Wi-Fi, so hopefully this goes okay.
Yeah. We got a little bit of a late start. People are already asking where you were, and I think Dale already called you out for potential internet issues.
I'm pretty sure Dale was quoting Anakin.
Oh.
Or Vader, I guess technically Vader from Revenge of the Sith.
I get it now, yep.
He's in rare form tonight, shouting everyone's name as they come into the room.
We were just missing the no from you at this point. So,
no.
But so listen, we've got at least 4 hours of show content just on these two episodes alone. Right. And you've got, I don't even know what it looks like, 10 pages of news. So why don't we kick that off?
Yeah. So it is a lot, but we can get through it pretty quickly. So a lot of Star Wars Young Jedi Adventure news came out today on the Star Wars show. Or Star Wars This Week, and basically confirming something that's weirding news. So there's a TV show, and then there's a series of books that are coming out. The show is created for preschoolers and their families. So this is going to be on Disney Plus and Disney Junior.
Hold on.
Yep.
Again, we iterate. This is for preschoolers, not for you, Mr. 45-year-old man sitting in the basement of your parents that going to be, slamming this thing all day long because it's not accurate. It's not accurate, just to be clear. Right. But go on, and I'm that person too. But go on, please.
I was about to say, because you were actually disappointed this was going to be for preschoolers. But so this is all this comes out May 4th as well. So it's all right here. This is set during the High Republic series. And to quote StarWars.com, the animated series follows young Jedi younglings as they study the ways of the Force, explore the galaxy, help citizens and creatures in need, and learn valuable skills needed to become Jedi along the way. So they gave us a cast of who the voice actors are, as well as the characters. The characters are Kai Brightstar, Liz Soleil, Nubs, who's D. Bradley Baker, actually, Nash Durango, RJ-83, Droid, and then Yoda will be a part of all of this as well. So again, kind of like a High Republic Adventure sort of kind of thing, but much younger than that. And there's also going to be some books that go along with it. So if for those that have kids, if you remember the readers, like the little level 1 readers and things like that.
Yeah, right.
You'll have some of those. These are ages 3 to 5, and then ages 3 to 7, like little golden books and things like that will also be a part of all of this. So Star Wars Young Jedi Adventures is way too long for a 3-year-old to talk about, but we are getting people hooked on the High Republic, and first time High Republic is going to be on screen in any kind of TV show type of thing. So pretty exciting from that respect, but again, characters that are new except for Yoda.
Yeah. So temper expectations unless you're 3 and still run around a pull-up.
Right. These are life lessons. I presume if you watch Disney Junior, or if you have throughout your life, you are probably going to get exactly what you expect from Disney Junior with the Star Wars flair.
Yeah. No, this is good. And we got they've done this. Disney's is no, they're no stranger to preschool content. They've had Disney Junior for years now, and they've got some really great stuff on there, to be honest. On top of that, they kind of started dipping their toe in some of this stuff on the YouTube channel. They were doing the little kid things and the shorts and all of that. Maybe that was kind of where they were teasing it out to see what kind of viewership they were getting. But nonetheless, the fact that it's set in the High Republic is just kind of a cherry on top for me.
Right. In other news, still kind of in the book arena-ish, a new comic was announced, and it's going to be part of the Star Wars Return of the Jedi 40th anniversary. But the reason why I'm highlighting this one is because this cover is like 7 shades of awkward because it's for Lando. So it's Star Wars Return of the Jedi, Lando #1. I think this is probably a one shot. But the more when you look at this cover at first glance, it's kind of like a recreation of the younger Han Solo at the sabacc table, that we saw in Solo Star Wars story.
Yeah.
But it's like Donald Glover dressed with Billy D. Williams' head, with Chewbacca kind of superimposed right next to him. And then you get like mom's painted fingernails in the foreground holding a sabacc deck. So it's it's so weird. Like the artwork is a little strange. And I don't like the dog on people's work or things like that, but it just looks like his head is kind of pasted on there like the face was for Lando. And it's just not working for me.
Yeah, we've got it pulled up here on the live stream. So anybody listening to the audio, they're probably wondering what we're chuckling about here. But yeah, it is kind of awkward. The nails are on point, though. So those have to be Lauren's hands because she's always got her nails done to the T. But
I mean, they are nicely manicured. I will give them that.
It is weird, though. Like even the perspective looks a little off.
It is. And Chewbacca is like, the artwork for like the cards and the table and all of that is like really clean, like super clean and really cool, really great. But man, like Lando and then Chewbacca are just, something just doesn't work right. But a little bit about it. Basically, this is
what's it about?
Right? Yeah, no one cares about that. So basically, what this is following Lando and Chewie as they get ready to. So this is after Empire Strikes Back, on their way to rescue Han. They get sidetracked. A little bit of mission going on. They have to trust someone they shouldn't trust. Lando and Chewie are learning to work together because you remember they have a lot of pent up emotional angst. They're coming in Empire Strikes Back with what's going on with Han, so they're having to learn to work together as well. So it's kind of that journey of them working together as they go to Jabba's palace as they get ready and go along. That
is interesting though, because that's one of the. There are so many things that used to be so like that were just left for our imagination, and I understand they're filling the holes, and I actually do appreciate it. And this is one of the ones that I've always wondered about. Take away the what was it? The footage that was cut out of Return of the Jedi with Luke doing the lightsaber and then all that stuff. I always wondered how that transition happened, and we got some of it. What was it? In one of the comics, I think they talked a little bit about this, but I would like them to kind of fill in some more gaps here, just because they were a little contentious at the end of Empire Strikes Back. So how'd they get there?
But yeah, so I had to share that. And in more news, we'll switch over to Celebration. And speaking of Lando, Billy D. Williams announced that he's going to be at Star Wars Celebration in London, Excel Center here in April, as well as Rosario Dawson, the one and only live action Ahsoka Tano herself.
Yep.
So pretty exciting stuff there. And then maybe before we get to Bad Batch news, Hasbro Pulse has a lot of new figures out there, but 2 of them I wanted to call out that are pretty cool. One is a new Black Series Jesse in Stormtrooper regalia. Yeah, Black Series. So a lot of people get into that one. And then a vintage collection Hauser, of all people.
They've been on. There was like a petition they've been screaming for Hauser for a while now.
Yeah, and every once in a while they'll reach out and they'll do like a poll or something like that. So I don't know if that was how that happened, but hey, however it came about, I'm glad that Jesse and Hauser are getting some love. Again, Black Series and kind of the TVC collection, vintage collection, both. So again, pretty excited to see both of those guys get a figure. Both of those characters get a figure.
Yeah.
And then finally, Albert, this is all on StarWars.com, and there's so much more over there, by the way. Like, I can't even tell you. They've got Gunji cookies going on right now.
It's almost like they've got a convention coming up or something.
A convention? Oh, yeah. There's lots coming up here. Even C2E2 out in Chicago is coming up here pretty soon, in addition to Celebration. And plus, there's another one that Mark Thompson is going to that he's been promoting.
Yeah,
so a lot of stuff going on right now. But there was an interview with D. Bradley Baker from the Bad Batch, of course, and there were a couple of things in here I did pull out from the quote. And again, it's just kind of talking about season 2. But he did talk about 3 things I thought were important. So one of them was on Cody. He says his story becomes very, very interesting. So he's just kind of teasing it because Cody is one of his kind of interesting characters to watch. And then another one was on Crosshair. He said, my favorite episode is a quote. My favorite episode is a Crosshair episode. It's coming up about 3/4 of the way through. It's a really interesting story. And his own personal journey is particularly interesting to me. It's a real standout this season, end quote. So,
when he comes back.
Right, when he comes back. Yeah, so Crosshair, for those that don't know, is D. Bradley Baker's favorite Bad Batch character. And so then he goes on a little bit later on in the article to talk about the rest of season 2. So it was the adventures, twists of plot, and turns of fate that are coming will be unexpected. Some will be welcome and some will not. He laughs. But it's a heck of a ride. I think fans are going to be very happy with where the second season goes. So again, it kind of light stuff. It's an interview and he's just kind of talking really high level. Didn't want to spoil anything. But again, more to come from Cody, which we kind of expected maybe would happen. A lot more with Crosshair. We're going to get some resolution in some of these cases. And then, twists and turns are around the bend, if you will.
No, that's good. We had brought that up, whether or not we would see Cody at this point. And I think wherever Cody's at, you get Rex, and I guess you get Echo now too, which I had a question of at the very end of this episode is, okay, so where does Echo go from here? How much are we going to see him realistically in the series? And I think based on that, I think there's a good chance he still will pop up, right? But
I think we'll still get a little bit of it. But we'll talk a little bit as we go on.
Yeah.
The other else we need to talk about before we go on, Albert, is our Patreon members and how amazing they are. A special thank you to all of our Patreon members, especially the now part of the tribe folks. Mike, Rob, Lauren, Dante, Risk, Justin, Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Isabella, and Uncle Leon. And the Delusions of Grandeur members, of course, Rod, Kathy, and Hard Countered. Thank you guys so much. If you're ever curious about Patreon and some of the things that we do there, which is top 3, we invite Patreons onto the show to join us. Join Lauren as well sometimes and come in and talk Star Wars, our favorite moments, deeper dives into characters and things like that. CantinaCast.com/Patreon will show you all the different tiers. Everything starts as low as just a couple of bucks a month. Get you all of that content and all of the live streams that we put away into the vault. All of those are linked and made available to you on Patreon as well. So you have access to the live stream if that's more your bag than listening to the podcast.
Yep.
And
Awesome.
if you're listening to this podcast,
I am.
Gosh, I've got to stop all this stuff, man. We were on YouTube. We live stream, like you said earlier, CantinaCast.com/YouTube. We'd love for everyone to join out or come out and join us. Like these wonderful people in the chat tonight so far: Steph, Music Train, Rob, JJ Skywalker, Risk, Sky, Dale, and Lauren. If I missed anybody, I apologize, but I will come back around and get you at the end.
Yeah, all you got to do is put your name, like leave a comment, and we'll get your name. Okay, he can't see you if you don't say anything. And we know you're out there because we can see how many people are connected, and it doesn't always add up. There's a lot more on than talk. So
we see you listening.
I am Dante. We see you. Come on, we saw you.
Oh, hey, Dante.
He already made one grumpy comment earlier about the preschool thing, and if it was going to be anybody in the chat, it was going to be Dante. Okay, so you ready to talk about these 2 episodes?
Man, I need a break. Why don't you talk for a little bit? I've been talking like a million miles an hour.
So, Jonesy, tell me what you think about. No, I'm kidding.
The people that listen to this at like 1.5 speed are going to be like, "Wow, Jonesy sounds like a damn chipmunk."
I like watching when I'm editing like long track. I'm like, "Dang, Jonesy said a lot right here." Okay, so the 2 episodes. So let me give you kind of my initial thoughts. I'm going to pull up my notes. My initial thoughts on these episodes. And
sure.
I texted you the day of. Like I stayed up to 2 a.m.
Yeah, tell people what you told me.
Watch them back to back. I don't even remember what I told you. I'll summarize it because I don't have it in front of me. But after the first viewing, I told Jonesy that in short, I didn't know if this really needed to be 2 episodes, right? And I felt like it did deliver on some fronts, but I felt a little underwhelmed. Now, I've seen it now. I've only seen these 3 times each, right? Because it's like 6 hours of viewing at this point. So I feel better about it. Like, I think it did deliver. I was pretty happy with the episodes. I'm happy with what we got. I don't know if and you guys probably know me by now, the politics piece of it I didn't feel like I was sloshing through long narratives of politics and how things were happening. But maybe that was the point. Like it dawned on me when I was doing show notes today that maybe this really wasn't my kind of cup of tea, because we got into a lot of political stuff. And I thought it was very interesting. The first episode was, we didn't even have anybody from the Bad Batch at all, right? It was just kind of the big setup, and then we got the payoff. And I think, could they have condensed this down into one story? Yeah. Would it have done anything? No. So I'm not going to complain, right? I mean, I got more content. I got more behind the scenes stuff of what's going on in the Senate, current state of affairs. All of that was great. I think the big payoffs for me were 100%. Oh, 3 things. 1, getting to see the Bad Batch be the Bad Batch. Like, I miss them in full operation, doing war stuff and working as a team. And we got that at the very end, right? The music was the only thing missing there. Like, I really wanted the Bad Batch theme to happen in that moment, and it didn't, which I was like, that seems like a missed opportunity. So that was really one of the big highlights for me. The other 2, we're seeing Palpatine, and specifically Ian McDiarmid delivering. I wrote the whole speech down, and when you just read it, it's really not that impressive. Like, there's nothing monumental in terms of what he's saying.
Delivery
but it's
is
the way
everything,
he
man.
delivers these lines. Holy bananas. He's so good. I mean, well, of course he's good. He's the emperor. But that was just a huge treat to be able to to have that character. And we had speculated whether or not we were going to get to see him. Is it just, some video? What the heck's Omega doing there? Right. All of that got answered. And I was pretty happy with the way it was answered. But yeah, that speech alone was just pretty fantastic. And then the last thing I think was just that little twist at the very end with Echo and not anticipating that was going to happen. I mean, I felt like Omega, like, wait a minute, we're a squad. You guys, you just got here. And I think in some ways, I think it justifies why we've been talking about how Echo really doesn't, like, he felt like he was starting to fit in more this season, right? Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that was, it was good to see that maybe that was all done intentionally. They didn't want to put him front and center because he didn't feel like it. And when you think about it, where should he be? Right? He should, in my opinion, he should be with Rex. Like, I don't see why. It's great that he was with the Bad Batch, and that's what they, like he said, that's what he needed at the time. They needed him, he needed them, etc. But now it's Rex coming to him and saying, "Hey, look, I need you." Even if he didn't explicitly say that, I think he knows that. And for Echo, it is about the larger picture. He's been saying it. He's been signaling this now for the last 6 episodes that, hey, let's get out there. There are people. We got to be doing more. I mean, he seems to be he's had his foot on that pedal for so long now. And here the opportunity arises for him to join Rex, go out there and do more than run, missions for Sid or whatever it is the Bad Batch is going to go on to do. I can't see why he wouldn't take the opportunity. So all that makes sense to me, and I'm glad he left. I mean, it sucks for Omega, it sucks for us, but this is really good for Echo. I've got more opening thoughts, but your thoughts on that stuff first.
Yeah, someone in the chat may have cried during that scene, just saying not going to call anybody out. But I mean, still, I think, yeah, this episode really set up Echo to go. As soon as we heard what was going on, we saw Rex come on screen. I mean, everything was just setting up perfectly. Like, this is where Echo makes this call. We already saw he just jumped right at the chance. Didn't hesitate, didn't check with Hunter, nothing, saying Rex will be there.
Right.
And so as soon as that happened, it really felt like this was a direction that the show could definitely take. And it was a bit of a twist. And again, everybody knew but Echo. And I can't wait for us to talk a little bit about that because, I don't know, they kind of did her dirty a little bit there. But to go back, I wanted to go back to what you had said with Tribe, the episode before this one with Gunji. In that episode, you had talked about that it felt rushed because it used to be a 4-episode arc. It just felt like we were kind of jumping things to things. And so as I was watching this, and I didn't get to watch it till yesterday evening, and I had your messages already kind of in my head about, was it really necessary for it? I'm thinking, but if it was only 1 episode, would it have felt the same kind of way? Or would it have felt a little bit rushed? And I really enjoyed the pacing of these 2 episodes. I thought that they did take enough time to breathe. That they were a little bit slower, maybe, but I think it also helped build a little bit more of that suspense, at least as much suspense as the Bad Batch is going to build. And so I think that the pacing really did. I thought it really worked really well for me, and I really enjoyed it. I love the political atmosphere that created without getting too deep into the politics of everything. It didn't, like, for a younger viewer, it wouldn't have totally confused them, right? And we had enough right and wrong, this is good and this is bad type of things to where people of all ages grasp onto that. And when Omega says that she's angry, it was like, wow, okay. I mean, you just don't have many characters come out and just say how they're feeling.
Yeah.
And it was really refreshing, I think, in that way that she had this moment. Now, why they sent a kid to protect the senator and keep an eye on her is a little bit silly, but whatever, Star Wars.
Like we've said it many times. The amount of people in Star Wars that entrust the fate of the galaxy on somebody under the age of 10 is astounding. Like, someone needs to do the stats, the math behind it. But sorry.
I mean, yeah, any teenager really, for that matter. I mean, even those that are 17, not really making great decisions for the most part.
Sure.
Hi, Anakin.
Well, we enlisted 18, so.
I mean, true. But again, we have queens and policymakers now that are teenagers in the Galactic Republic and whatever comes after.
Trusting our fate in a boy.
Right. But still, I like the episode overall. I like the tone of it. I mean, like you said, even McDiarmid just really, man, the icing on the cake. The way that he twisted the whole thing was just absolutely, perfect. That Rex and company finally see it and call it out and kind of say what it was. While a little on the nose, a little on point, it was still really that they finally get it too. And so I like that we finally got some of those acknowledgments that, we're always behind. But there's still something we can do. We get a little bit of clarity around what Rex's beliefs are, what he's doing. Some of the things you and I have talked a lot about this season and last. Saving the clones. Confirmation of what that looks like. And again, when you hear that, man, perfect way for Echo to transition, to something else and for us to come back and visit them later. So overall, really enjoyed this episode. Again, the entertainment value is high. And I think for what we talked about last week, that bar of, okay, are you invested in it from the story perspective? Is it having a little more weight to it? Like you said in the opener, I think this really did bring that bar back up to where we thought it was going to with these 2 episodes.
Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit more about the episodes coming up. And, we're at this point, we're at the midway point, right? And I think we're at I hate to use that term watershed moment, but it does feel like we are kind of there at this precipice because things are going in a direction that I don't think I was anticipating. And I've got some questions about where the Bad Batch goes from here specifically, but more on that later. The other quick thoughts I had as far as kind of initial thoughts and feelings, I did, as much as I don't like Star Wars politics at times, I do enjoy real world politics a lot, which is kind of weird and fascinating in my own head.
Well, you like drama.
Well, real world drama I love. I don't, Star Wars stuff is, it's a little different, but there were a lot of parallels here, like to, mostly the U.S. history, like, and I'm going to say the Senate was kind of representing the U.S. and it can represent a lot of, larger countries. But I mean, they were dealing with the issues that we deal with, right? Like when our heroes come home, how do we treat them? Are we funding them correctly? Are we, were they just tools or assets or a means to an end? And then that whole piece of it is fascinating. And it's kind of cool to see that's happening with the clones.
And lack of representation of those folks when it comes to policies of what their future should look like.
Yeah. Well, see now, okay, I have this in my show notes later. This is where the politics lose me because now I got millions of questions about how do you get a seat in the Senate? Is it a race? Is it a group of people? Is it a culture? I mean, it just seems like it's kind of.
I think you're thinking too hard about it, Albert.
I know. Well, this is why I have problems, Jonesy.
This is why you have me.
So, but I did enjoy that, and the real world politics of all of that. At least and then the world police piece of it, right? I mean, the U.S. we've always talked about: are we the world police? Should we be the world police? Right? And essentially, it's kind of what's happening here, right? You got people saying, "Look, we need an army. Someone's got to defend us, and even though we're not at war, et cetera, et cetera." All of these themes that come up in our real world politics, at least from a U.S. standpoint, were kind of surfacing in this episode. So I did enjoy that they were at least leveraging some of that. And then the last one is kind of trivial, but I did like the fact that we, at the end of season 1, when we did the breakdown of that final episode, we went back and forth about whether or not did they just blow Topeka City or was it like everything, right? And I think we definitely got the answer here in this episode was they got rid of everything. They leveled or sunk or whatever term you want to use the entire population of Kamino, and that has a bigger, I think, ramifications as we saw a little bit later, right? So I did enjoy that we at least came back to that and they answer that question. I still don't know how, Crosshair got off the island, but maybe we'll get there too at some point. Okay, those are the last 2 bullets I had. Anything else from you before we get into the deeper dive?
No, let's jump into it. We'll hit these other things here as we go.
Yeah. Okay, so why is it that every time we open up on Coruscant, it's always a fade from black? And there's like this ominous music playing. Like, my God, they can't cut Coruscant some slack. I guess it's because the Empire's there. But nonetheless, we open in 79s, which is the bar that we saw in season 6. Yeah, back in Clone Wars. And
a lot of callbacks to season 6 and 7 and Clone Wars in this episode.
And I didn't have this so much in my notes, but as I was watching this, I think it might have been you that I was on. This felt more like a true Clone Wars episode. And that's not a bad thing. Right. You know what I mean? It was just so seeped in Clone Wars. And I guess it makes complete sense given where we are in the story in the Bad Batch, but it's a far cry from the episodes we've just been on with right.
The previous episodes have been very Clone Wars because they're basically that next step in it. But this one being back on Coruscant, which we spent a lot of time with.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of time in this. And season 7 came back and spent more time on Coruscant in a different way. And it did feel much more Clone Wars-y than some of the others. But again, we also kind of felt that with the Crosshair episode, a few episodes back as well. with the solitary clone. It felt the same type of mood, right? Seeing the different
Mm-hmm.
scenes and everything coming to, with the Capitol all in its specter and glory.
The music too was very different than we had in the Clone Wars, but it did remind me a lot of Andor. It was some of the same.
It did, yeah. It didn't resonate as much with me this time, or
No.
like for this episode. It just wasn't as, I don't know if it just wasn't the fit or whatever it was, but it was good. It didn't resonate and really strike me near as much as like some of the other episodes have so far.
Yeah, right. And so we open up with these two clones, Slip and Cade. Both were on the Venator when they took down the the Kaminoans, and they're struggling with this idea of what do we do. There was a line in there where he says, "We're not bad men, but what we did was wrong." Right. Again, to kind of hark back to real world politics, this was the view of a lot of people coming back from Vietnam, which we know Star Wars is hugely influenced by, right? The Vietnam War. But a lot of soldiers, my father included, if I could just be candid, has told me stories of, not specifically, but things that he did that he regretted, and he just was following orders, right? He's not a bad person, but he did some horrible things. And so all of this stuff is just so fascinating that they're bringing us into the Bad Batch and the Clone Wars in the way they did. But Cade is the one who feels like, and he's already reached out. He's already kind of set his own death sentence here, essentially by trying to, bring this to light. And this whole first scene ends with him being assassinated by someone that we'll find out a little bit later. But it did feel like they were trying to really hook you into thinking that this was Crosshair. But for me, it was like,
Crosshair doesn't miss like he does.
Well, he doesn't miss, and why would he go undercover? Like, I don't know that made any sense at all. But I mean, if I'm 3, then fine. Yeah, I'm confused and probably duped. But I'm kidding. Yeah, if you were duped, I apologize.
No, I like that I like that aspect of it. That in the line you said was absolutely perfect. That we just get this idea that they're not mindless drones. I think is the main takeaway here is that they do have, and Rex says a little bit later on, more of our brothers are waking up from this nightmare, right, of what they've done, and they're trying to deal with it, the trauma that they're now trying to process, and they're not designed, and you hear it in the bar, throughout this episode too. I need to be a trooper. All we've known is this. This is what we do. This is the only thing we've ever been bred to think about and to operate within, and so to go and think of anything beyond that and to, process the feelings you've had, while we've seen lots of examples of that throughout Clone Wars in particular, I think in this moment where there's not a lot of action going on, they have a lot more time to think about all these things. And when something big happens, like what happened on Kamino, it really strikes them in a much different way than it did when they're just getting whisked off to the next planet to deal with the next problem of separatists, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, do you think there's like a hotline for employees to call to report these types of things?
I'm going to go with no. And if it is, it's probably Rampart's desk or Masameda that just goes straight to the kill line.
Yeah. Go straight to Masameda's desk and they kill you.
They just take your name down. Yeah.
I just wondered, like, how did he call this in? Like, what did he do?
I know, right? He sent him a message. I'm like, did you just write him a hand letter and just slip it under his door?
Again, this is why I have problems with Star Wars and just life in general, right? Okay, so then from there, we move on to the Senate, and we had like 3.5 minutes of I timed how much politics we had here. 3.5 minutes of politics, but we get there's now, so the conspiracy threw me off too, because in my head, I had a million ideas as far as what the conspiracy was. Never once did it cross my mind that the conspiracy was really, Kamino didn't just get swept up in this cataclysmic storm. It was, Rampart taking it down. So we learned that is kind of what the alibi is, and which doesn't make any sense. Like,
no, that's the dumbest thing.
Organa
ever.
was like spitting truth, like later on, like how would, it survived for years, and yet everybody just went, oh, that makes sense. A storm, right? Right. But then this is where I really got, sorry, Jonesy, but this is where I really got lost in like all these people popping up. Like the banking clan had representation. You had military leaders. They were talking about the clones having representation. I'm like,
the Commerce Guild. The weird lady was the Commerce Guild, I believe.
Yeah. But then they didn't have like, why wouldn't somebody from, I mean, I guess technically they did have representation. Maybe they didn't from Kamino. They're used to, well, we get her a little bit later, but like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, yeah, they're not citizens. I mean, Kamino would have had representation, presumably, if they weren't being hidden, which I guess it sounds like they did have it with the former senator that we come across later on, but it wouldn't matter because they don't have representation anyway. They're not citizens of anywhere. That's their home world, but they're still not considered citizens, right?
Yeah, that's it's bizarre to me. How the problem.
But
with
again,
the
it's
Senate,
not. You're thinking with it a bit literally here. I think as well as just who is going to speak on their behalf. Yeah, I think that's the idea, though. Is just who is going to look out for their best interests and say, "Look, guys, you don't have a voice anywhere from anyone. Who is going to look out for them and say that they don't end up like they did in Obi-Wan Kenobi with the guy just laying on the ground begging for money." I mean, and granted, that scene makes a lot more sense all of a sudden with what we're probably going to get.
Well, sure. Yeah. No, that scene popped into my head many times in this episode.
Right.
Just kind of seeing that whole thing. But, but I mean, it's really about like who's going to fight for the people. Right. And we're starting to get more, right. The defense bill comes front and center during this moment. And it was nice that we got to see Senator Pablo. So coming out, same actress that played her. What was I forget her name now? Sharon Duncan Brewster.
Sharon Duncan Brewster. Yeah.
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 So it was great that she came back to voice that role, which is interesting because that means she's going to be a defector as well at some point and heads out to be part of lead the Rebel Alliance.
And Albert, who was Senator Chuchi's voice?
I did not catch that.
Jennifer Hale.
Oh, was it?
And do you know who Jennifer Hale is, right?
I do, yeah.
She is Bastilla Shan and Satele Shan.
And she's done a couple of,
SWTOR.
From the old SWTOR games.
And she was a bunch of characters in the Clone Wars as well, including Aayla Secura and a bunch of others too. But yeah, but there's your SWTOR KOTOR obligatory connection.
I wasn't going to do it, but I mean, I appreciate that.
I have to. There's some things I have to do now. There's things that I have to say, kind of like Ben Solo, then of Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, here we go. Every episode, you try to take these cheap shots. Okay, so we get
into... who doesn't take a cheap shot, though, Albert?
Who?
Ben Solo within A Rise of Skywalker.
All right, we're going to move into the principles of the Senate. So basically, they're trying to shift over. I mean, they're making this argument about shifting military people into positions where, of citizens rather than, where's the loyalty there? We get to, they were talking about like, where's the emperor at? Right. Like he seems like this lame duck emperor. I kept thinking he was going to pop out. Right. I was thinking, oh, this is the moment. This is where he's nope, it's not him. But you get the sense that he's not around, and he does make his appearance a little bit later. And it certainly has the impact that we're all thinking of.
Masameda had a great cover for him. He trusts this body to do what's best in the, he basically given the impression that the Senate still means anything.
Yeah.
The Imperial Senate is actually, out there actually accomplishing something that's not his will, that he actually cares about.
Yeah. I thought it was kind of a cheap shot, too, that little senator was talking about how, well, they can't be represented because they die quickly. I thought, well, that's not fair.
Their advanced aging, they'll just expire, basically.
Right.
No, it was pretty awful.
That makes them the best people to be in position of power, honestly. Because you don't have to worry about terms, like long terms. They're going to pass at some point, right?
Now now you're just being like the Commerce Guild.
Yeah.
You have become what
the very thing I sought out to fight.
Right.
And there's, again, no plans to keep and nourish the army that they have now. Why start a new one? This was all good stuff. I mean, they were making some good debates and counter arguments as to why all this. And then Rampart finally comes up, swears that he's going to have a plan in place. He's going to take care of everybody, right? And he wants to address their concerns and provisions. Nobody buys his BS except for everybody in the Senate. And so then the bill gets tabled again, which, of course it comes.
It was good. Well, it was good to see why it keeps getting deferred, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we kind of heard it. It was a little unclear about what the future of this bill was. We figured, you defer it once and it's going to get passed because of whatever's going on, and then the destruction of Camino. And so, why was it held up? And at least we got that curtain peel back. We got the answer to it, I think.
Yeah,
I don't know if we needed that fair level of the answer, but we got the answer. So now we can't complain too loudly.
Well, I can't. It's our podcast. The whole conversation between Masameda and Rampart was actually really revealing. One, I love that they name dropped Tarkin, right? Tarkin said that Rampart would be the person that could get everybody behind the bill. Right. No pressure, dude. I mean, you've only got the Grand Moff sitting there saying that you're going to be able to do this. We learned that there's a great cover up and how they don't want this exposed because of what could possibly happen. You know, this keeps going back, and not to harp on it, but it keeps going back to this conversation or argument going back and forth about why Palpatine is not just putting the hammer down and just getting rid of everybody. And we're seeing more and more situations and reasons as to why eventually he's just like, I've had it. Like, this is it. We're done. I'm closing the Senate down. And, you know, of course, he's waiting for the Death Star to be built and tested, but that's exactly what's kind of happening here.
Right. But now that Masameda has so much influence and really has grown into this role of, threatening people around him, which we didn't really get a great feel of in the prequel trilogy. You get a little bit of it in the comic books later on, but it was great to see him be this character now. This was Steve Stanton who did the voice for Masameda as well. Yeah. But to see him finally on screen and being this more imposing, menacing force that carries the weight of the Emperor behind his words, and that threatening, and that your life is basically on borrowed time if you don't deliver on this. And of course we see what happens later on, but it was great to see that character finally come through and show us why he's so disliked in general, which is a good thing. Like, why is a good thing that he's disliked.
Right. No surprises. And then of course we get verification or that he definitely has somebody out there that's going to go Fortnite on them if anybody that opposes the bill, which we'll see again a little bit later. From there, we cut over to the scene with Senator Chuchi kind of talking to all of the clones and trying to get their support. Very grassroots effort, very stereotypical of a senator walking to how many times have you seen a politician, especially running here in for U.S. politics, U.S. presidency, they head to the bar to be with the people, right? Have a few brewskis and try to earn their votes and support.
Have you ever been in one of those little rallies in a restaurant or something?
I've never been in one, but they always seem so weird and awkward. But
they are. I happened to be at a Mexican restaurant one time when Beto O'Rourke came into like our thing. If anybody's a Texan knows this was a really big deal for our governorship and everything. But he came in there and it was crazy, man. I mean, it was absolutely crazy. Like, it's the level of fanaticism sometimes.
Yeah, there you go. Alex just said, he said, roll up their sleeves. They roll up their sleeves every time. Right. This is
unbutton the shirt. Worker. I'm one of you.
I'm one of you. Okay, so we're probably taking that too far. But she had a good line in there about, you spent years fighting for us, let me fight for you. That there have been a number of politicians that have used this line or some version of it in, again, real world politics here. And the clones believe her. I mean, they seem to buy in and take her at face value that, look, she does have their best interest in mind. And given that for some of them, they've got to be feeling like their time has expired, right? They're already feeling the pressures of being squeezed out. And so, like our very own Clone Force 99, what do you do when there's no war, right? How do you adapt to all of that? So I think there's a lot of valid, good reasons why these guys are getting behind her. But I mean, they don't have a voice. So like, what are they doing? I mean, it doesn't, again, I'm disconnected there, but that's just me. Okay. So we get Slip coming to her and kind of talking about the cover up. He exposes all of that and he tells her the truth that it's Rampart who actually did it, right? We get this whole thing about it was a cover up and they killed some clones, and in some cases there were clones killing clones. I don't know to what extent. I mean, I guess it would be the clones being grown. I don't think he was talking about Clone Force 99 specifically, but the fact that they leveled this place, they know they took their own brother's blood in all of this. And just one quick note, and I'm not taking credit for this, but somebody on Twitter, and they're not even somebody I follow, it just kind of came up in one of my, hey, you may be interested in this post, and I didn't get a picture of it. But somebody mentioned that he says it's CT0409. If you go back to season 4, episode 9 of the Clone Wars, that is the Umbara arc where the clones were killing other clones. Right. So I don't know if that's
intentional, but it's a pretty cool Easter egg.
It is cool Easter egg. If anybody wants that. And then Slip, of course, he's talking about, he's got a contact. We all kind of knew this was going to be Rex. I mean, who else would it be at this point? But any thoughts before I move on to the Chuchi and Rampart awkward conversation that comes up here?
No, it was really good to see the clones' reaction. I mean, they kind of go this emotional gambit. I mean, they just go everywhere from just denial to confusion because they really just don't know, because they're just not bred to think this way. But it's good that they said, you know what, we got to take a chance because she's right. We don't have a way forward here. And so it's really, I liked that they all kind of came around and they at least gave her the opportunity to try. And she stayed there all night, it looked like. I think it was night when she went in. It was daytime by the time she left. So clearly they were there all day hashing something out. This bar full of about 10 troopers speaking for the millions across the galaxy.
Right.
They're clones. They all think alike, right? No, but whatever.
Yep.
The sentiment was genuine, right?
Well, and so one thing that came out from all of this, and it comes up right after that, when Chuchi's meeting with Rampart, and of course, again, he's reassuring her, yeah, we're going to take care of them. We'll talk about your considerations, which, for him means, we'll just kill them all. Right. But one thing that really like struck me, and shame on me for not really putting a lot of thought into this, but when they actually said there were still millions of clones out there, I thought, my goodness, like I would have thought by now, we had talked about maybe they were potentially sending out the clones to kind of do all the heavy lifting, take the big losses and casualties, and then swoop in with their, stormtroopers, the conscripted soldiers. And that would be a way to kind of weed them out because they're going to die anyways. And plus they have a lot of, they're very seasoned warriors, that kind of thing.
Right.
But still to think that there's millions out there. And then we fast forward.
And we did kind of talk about it, and we did walk it back a little bit too, of saying that we kind of thought that at one point, but throughout this season, we have seen that it's the clone troopers over and over and over.
Yeah.
And it was very intentional for all of that, right? So when I heard millions, I was a little surprised at the number, but then the more I thought about it, I'm like, well, no, that still makes tons of sense. That this is still the predominant, especially if the bill has been continued to be deferred. They did small pockets of this. And again, season 1 confused that a little bit with the programs that they were showing us that they were trying to get off the ground. But clearly those were just very localized installations and those training programs were not fully funded to be able to actually, full blown go through this. It was almost like a proof of concept effectively.
Yeah.
Of what they could accomplish.
Yeah. Right. Diverting money notwithstanding too.
Well, and again, like the diversion of money, like what they talked about a little bit later on with the former Kaminoan, finance senator or whatever she was, finance committee senator, was like, what did he actually do with the money? Was it funneling into that other program to start funding this idea of like what to do after the clones were decommissioned and this other, this bill, that type of thing? They never really resolved like where the money actually went.
Yeah, it could be going to the defense bill, bolstering whatever they needed to ensure that those troopers would be better than the clones. I think that's probably one theory.
Or the demonstration that we saw in season 1. That may have been another example of it. It's just unclear on the timing because they didn't really clarify some of that.
There was a part of me that thought, okay, well, maybe they were funneling money into some of the very early things they needed to build the Death Star, because that wasn't cheap, right? So
that could be another part.
Maybe it's the TIE Defender project that Thrawn was trying to put together, right?
Well, that comes much later, though.
Yeah, but the tech's got to start somewhere.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
I'm just saying it. I'm throwing ideas out there, but nonetheless, it's like they never answered it. And now I'm like, okay, great. Now I'm never gonna know.
What'd you buy, Rampart?
But so yes, the number of clones still out there, shocking, but realistic. I get that. But then I started thinking, okay, so there's millions of these people, and yeah, they're going to die off pretty quickly. Although Rex is still around in Rebels, but where are they all? Right. I guess, right? And the other thing, and not to jump ahead, but a little bit later, now you've got Rex out there, you've got Cody. It sounds it sounds like I'm walking away from these 2 episodes as though like every day there's, I don't know, 200-300 at least. If there's millions out there, there's got to be a good amount of clones that are waking up to this realization of, holy crap, I've been under the influence of Order 66. What am I doing? This is not who I am. And what are they doing? Where are they going? Like, to me, the number of people, the clones that survive this, either is going to go way up and then come way down in some kind of a war or something, or they're just still out there in the galaxy all over the place by the time we get to like Rebels or Kenobi series, or I don't know. It just, the numbers, it's just kind of, it's really kind of changing things for me in my perspective of where these guys are and what happened to them now.
Well, and to Rex's point in the next episode, when he says there are, how many are really, him and Echo are, how often is this happening basically? And they're trying to do what they can, but there's just too few of them to go help anybody out. So while there might be several hundred or several thousand calls being made, to Rex, how many people is he actually able to get out? I mean, you got to figure this is probably 1s and 2s, maybe half a dozen at a time. And that's probably, it's not like that's happening every day. It's probably a very slow process to do all of that. And it takes time, And so again, while there's probably a lot of calls being made, the actual extraction is probably
Slow.
it's slow and maybe not very successful at the same time.
Right.
Because again, you would think if we were able to rescue them, then our team grows pretty quickly. So if he's not really been able to grow the team very much, that tells me that they're not all going very well. And we see an example of that this episode where Slip is taken out.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if if that becomes center to this, if that suddenly becomes front and center to the rest of the season or some part of the season about how do they scale that up?
And that's why I wanted to bring D. Bradley Baker's comments up at the beginning of the show during the news, because, that unwelcome, part where some people are going to love where we go and some things are going to be unwelcome, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is one of those things that while we want to see it, we know deep down the story that we're probably going to see is going to be a tragic one and a really sad one.
Yeah.
That's probably the path that's going, and we need to see it. We want to see it, even though it's going to hurt really bad when we do, because I'm with you. There's no way there's millions of clones across the galaxy.
Mm-mm.
By the time we get out of this, within a couple of years of this series, right? And so it seems like something catastrophic is going to happen and something very extreme is going to happen. And what does that look like? I have a feeling we're going to get a pretty good idea by the end of the season, because I'm with you. I think that this is now becoming more front and center. And you kind of called that this is going to be, Rex and company and the Bad Batch. How do we get people out?
Yeah.
But at some point, and it's all going to lead to that moment. And again, I think there's a lot of ways you can bring Crosshair back in, all that good stuff, which is cool. But unfortunately, it seems like it is now very squarely headed that direction.
Yeah. So, okay. So back to Chuchi. She gets a secure communication, which we know is coming from Bail Organa, right? And they kind of have this whole conversation about he knows what Rampart's really trying to do. She kind of lets him know. And then he basically says, look, if you're willing to take this one step further, then, I got some people you need to meet, kind of thing. From there, we go over to Rampart's orders, which, he's talking to the assassin. That assassin, if you notice, he walks up in that hologram. He almost does the Darth Maul stance with his arms crossed. It's kind of funny that they did that. I don't know if that was intentional or not. But yeah, Rampart basically says, kill the clone, kill the senator. And so I was thinking, I'm surprised Chuchi lived. At that point, I thought, okay, well, she's done. There's no way she's going to make it out of this episode. Certainly not the second episode, but she did. Okay, so we get Slips meet up at this point. So this is where Chuchi finds Slips, which he's not doing a very good job of hiding, I guess. But he makes a good point. Hey, if you found me, then they're going to find me too.
Yeah, definitely not very good at this.
Yeah, not very good at all. But he mentions
since when did all the clones get to wear have beards and everything?
I think
standards have really gone down.
Yeah, they really have. I don't have a beard. I just fit in with everybody else. He stood.
It was a great beard, though.
Here we go. Yeah,
way better than episode 2 Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Oh, that debacle.
I'm checking all the boxes tonight.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. These are the. If you're playing the Cantina Cast bingo, you may have already won.
Yeah, or a drinking game, whichever one you prefer.
He might be passed out on the floor at this point. But he says someone who can make me disappear where the Empire can't find me. It's aspirational that he would think that, but I get what he's trying to say. And of course, once he said that, it was okay, that's definitely Rex. It can't be anybody else at that point.
Right.
We get into them, getting whining.
Hold on, but pause it real quick. So he has a device that allows him to call Rex. So clearly there's something going around the clone army that it's not a secret what Rex and company are doing, but it is still very much on the down low of what's happening. But it's really curious. I have a lot of questions in that one. I know there are 0 answers right now.
Right. Yeah.
But how is that getting across, and how are they getting contact info for Rex on these secure channels? And again, he had to kind of assemble it, which I thought was really great. That wasn't just a, pick up the comm and call someone. You had to kind of do something to make it, get it all to work. Not crazy or anything, but still there are channels working. And I hope some of that comes about a little bit later about how they're actually operating and getting that word out to the clone troopers. And why aren't the clone troopers turning them in, the ones that are loyal, right?
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of good questions there. I would imagine it's one of those papers that's hanging on a telephone pole, and it's got the little danglies that you pull, and it says, "Are you a clone? Are you making bad decisions? Do you need to be hidden from the Empire? Call now." And you just pull that thing and call it.
Yeah. Call XER.
Right. Yeah. I don't know what else it could be, honestly. But no, so joking aside, I mean,
Overthinking it.
yeah, probably over. Well, the problem with that is if it's that easy, and I'm not saying it is, but presumably it is for the clones. Then at some point, is Rex's gig up? Do they kind of is the Empire going to catch on to this? Are they going to trace it back to them? Right? It doesn't seem like it's really out there or hidden very well. Maybe it is. I don't know.
And that's the part that I'm kind of leading to.
I'm with you.
Is like, how do they keep that secret for very long? And maybe they don't. I mean, maybe
they may have to adapt and change. This becomes a fulcrum.
Yeah, and maybe this is how the Rex that we see with Wolf and Gregor back in Rebels. Yeah, I'd love to go back and rewatch that after the season and see if what we learned throughout this goes back, and if there was dialogue that maybe we can tie back to the series that how they handled the clone troopers and what they tried to do for the rest of their brothers.
Yeah,
it's kind of leading me to believe we're going to get Wolf and Gregor this series. By the way,
I would love to see that because I think that it's inevitable and would make sense.
Yeah, Dante coming in strong. Thank you for calling the Clone Operator Network. To leave a message for Rampart, press 1. To secretly contact Rest, press 2. Okay, bye-bye. Otherwise, your call will be answered in the order it was received.
Please hold for the next available operator.
Your estimated wait time is...
Okay, all right. Off the rails. Come on, this show's already an hour in and we're not even done with the first one yet.
It's all going to fall into place. It'll be fine.
Okay, so where the heck were we? Oh, okay. So he mentions that the evidence, right? The evidence is still on the Venator, and it's hidden in. And this is all whatever. It's fine.
Yeah, it's in the database. He made a backup.
He made a backup, and yeah, security's pretty lax. It's the Empire, et cetera, et cetera, et
Right.
cetera.
And then we find that the Venator is on Coruscant getting retrofitted.
Mm-hmm. And so yeah, we get the whole assassin thing. They're kind of running around and shooting and all that, and then of course it's Rex that saves the day and again, they are using their blasters set to stun. I think they've been very consistent about it. Anytime they're attacking stormtroopers or clone troopers, they're on stun. Otherwise, everybody dies. Here
it finally all made sense, right? And I know it doesn't necessarily make sense from the Bad Batch perspective.
Sure.
But from Rex's perspective and for the rest of the show, it should now be 100% evident without a doubt why we're using stun, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And again, you could I know you could still be critical of why the Bad Batch is doing it because that hasn't necessarily been their directive, maybe Echo's, but maybe not the rest of them. But for the show, it should be very clear, and we could stop having this argument, I would hope now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we will. I would hope so.
Excellent.
Okay, so Rex shoots the assassin, the mask comes off, and it's not Crosshair. Oh, duh. And it turns out that it's, I guess, who is it? We don't know, right? I mean, it's like a trooper, but he's had his number wiped. And I mean, we're jumping ahead a little bit here. No, but I mean, this one, yeah.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is he's not answering any of the questions. You're right. He's had his number wiped. There's no identifiable face markings. He's clearly a clone. He calls Rex brother. You're on the wrong side, brother.
Yep, yep.
But then the really interesting thing was that, he calls himself a believer.
Yeah. That's
and
the
what
part.
The heck does that mean from a clone's perspective? Has he been brainwashed? Is the chip still working? Is he just, no, I just love this place. I love my job. Never going to do anything else. I mean,
the benefits are great.
And then for him to do like the whole, gnashing of the teeth capsule electric, whatever the Star Wars version of cyanide capsule is with the electricity shocking you and killing yourself. I mean, what is going on? Like, this is just something different. This is a whole nother flavor that we haven't really had where we have kind of brainwashed clones or maybe true believer clones like this. And we haven't had this since the Umbara arc, really, where we had, I forgot what his name was, Slick. That was a kind of reinforcing his Jedi leader, but clearly not for the right reasons.
Yeah, and there was I saw some folks in the chat talking about Slick earlier. I apologize, whoever that was, but I thought I saw them mention that maybe this was Slick himself. I don't remember his fate, honestly.
I think Slick was court-martialed, I believe.
Yeah, but
I don't think he was.
What's happened since then, though? Yeah, okay, yeah, right. No, I'm with you. Like,
maybe. I mean, yeah, we knew what they were doing with Crosshair, right? So you could presumably have them go through reconditioning. But it seems like that would have been more powerful than to recognize that it was Slick otherwise. So why waste an opportunity like that?
Yeah. I don't think he didn't have any identifiable markings. If his number's been wiped, then yeah, I mean.
Right.
Sorry, he looks like every other clone, but yeah,
But for
I don't
Rex, for them to have made that more evident, though, I think would have made it a more powerful
Oh yeah,
scene for
sure.
Rex.
No,
For
you're
them
right.
just to say that was, I mean, and they haven't, no one has said anything that we know, by the way, but if it were to be him and it just kind of got completely lost and we want to say that's an Easter egg,
Mhm.
to me, that's kind of a crummy Easter egg, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Too deep.
Well, too deep. I mean, too open for interpretation.
ambiguous,
And
yeah.
you missed a huge opportunity to rip Rex's heart out.
Okay, either way, if it's yeah, that's true too. But either way, assuming it's not Slick or anybody that we've ever known before, right? It's just some clone trooper they've wiped and done that. It's hard to wrap my head around the concept of what are you a believer in? Like, what is the ideology that you're following as a clone that would lead you to one, kill your own clones? Maybe he doesn't even think that way anymore. But then two, kill yourself. Like, take your own life for what cause? Like, I don't know. This is like maybe this will be the Patreon episode, and we can dig into some options here. I mean, we may have to leverage some canon or legend stuff, honestly, because I don't know that we've got a lot to work with in canon. But I just that idea of a clone, again, following an ideology that seems to be suicidal in nature and almost like a terrorist kind of thing. It just doesn't really. I don't know. It's very interesting. I'm glad they did that though, because that was a good way to end that. Right. I think it's lost on a lot of people as just to how mysterious that part is, because then we come back and we don't really touch on this at all in the second episode, and now the Bad Batch are back, and so we've kind of forgotten about it. But they wouldn't lay something like that down if we weren't going to get into that a little bit later. So I'll leave
Now
it.
Dale in the chat says Crosshair is pretty close to that. I don't know that I agree on that one, because I think, and I think you probably might agree with some level of this, is that there's more going on in Crosshair's mind and what he's considering and the struggle within than what we're necessarily being told outright on screen. But I think we're meant to feel that it is happening. So I don't know that I view Crosshair anything like the clone assassin that we got in this episode.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, I think he shares some of the same beliefs in that he's faithful to the cause. The cause being following orders, right? The cause being a soldier. Yeah. This would be a level, I think, beyond that. Like, this is an extreme. And then with Crosshair, it's a little different because it's more nuanced, because he had a chip and we don't know, was he lying? Was he telling the truth? Is it malfunctioning? There's a lot more to it than that. But I get what he's really saying is that, they're both people that follow orders, and that's just all they've ever known. But I think there's more here. I think there's more.
And to be fair, we care a lot more about Crosshair than we do some just rando assassin that comes up.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's still very confusing. Yeah, the whole thing is very confusing about what exactly he meant. Are we going to get more of this? Are there going to be others that come forward that are more like this, that don't want to be saved? And those are a lot of questions I've got running through my head on this one particular, just this type of scenario.
Right. All right. Well, let's move into Truths and Consequences. And we open with Omega, who is meditating, but I think we can go ahead and say she's a Jedi. No, I'm kidding. We can probably, you knew I was going to say that. Yeah, we can probably put to rest that she's not a Force sensitive.
Seems like it. So
I will find a way to resurrect this. Where's Miss Sunflower? How come she's not here tonight?
I know.
She had my back last week.
Well,
all right.
Yeah. So, and again, she's meditating and Echo comes up, she opens her eyes, she comes out of it a little bit frustrated, and Echo and her are talking, and she says, is she meditating? Yes. But she's not getting as much out of it as like Gunji, and Gunji was showing her how to meditate. She still likes it. She's still getting something out of it, which I think is really cool. And she's trying. And
so you're saying there's a chance.
When I saw this scene, I was like, no way. Come on.
Right. Yeah.
But then she comes back, and I mean, that conversation, well, he's a Jedi, and I think it basically confirmed that, at least from an overt Force sensitivity, there does not appear to be any of that within Omega as of right now. How about that? We'll leave it open for you.
Yeah. Thank you.
She doesn't seem to feel anything different, even as she's trying to adopt a bit of a Jedi or a Wookiee technique.
She just lacks the proper training. That's all.
Right.
You're still holding on.
She just needs the sacred texts.
Secret text. Yeah. Okay. I thought the comment she made, or what was it? The Echo talking about like he doesn't like being salty. I was like, ouch, that's a little too soon for him to make
Dude, this Echo Minor reference for him to call it out, I was like,
yeah,
awesome.
I don't enjoy solitude. It's like, man, that poor guy, he's still got post-traumatic stress syndrome and dealing with all of that.
But it was really cool for him to open up and at least, bridge the subject with Omega, and then also just tell him or show us why, what the Bad Batch mean to him as well. I think that was a kind of a touching moment. It was about as emotional as Echo gets for the most part, as we see later on. There's just not a lot of emotion to him, but his sense of loyalty to the Bad Batch, there was a need, for him to fill in, that he felt he could contribute. They were different like he was. Yeah. Just all of those things kind of came out, and it was really great to hear Echo say those things, because it had been a long time since we had really felt that from Echo, all the way back from when he joined Bad Batch, or became an ARC and all that other stuff.
Yeah, it all makes sense to me, right? I think we said this said it in the opener, but it makes sense. He needed them. He didn't have an identity. Like, he had been ripped of his identity for so long, and he had to adjust to this new identity. And what better group to take him in than somebody like the Clone Force 99, because of just how they're, the outcasts.
They're all different,
right?
And they're all different from one another as well. Yeah.
And so now he's had time to grow into his own body and machines, whatever he is. And now it's he knows who he is. He knows he's back. He's readjusted, and the fight is still there. That fire is still in his heart, and he's going to take that opportunity. He served them, and now he's going to be moving on. He says he's not going to, or he says, this is where I fit in. This is what I needed. Of course, that changes by the end of the episode. But yeah, it was a really good moment, and it was certainly setting us up for that kind of twist at the very end where he walks away. At this point, we get the FaceTime with Rex. This was from the trailer, where his hologram came up there, talking about Coruscant. It was crazy to think that Omega was questioning, like, what's Coruscant? Right. It's the center of the universe, or the galaxy,
right.
Literally. But for somebody like her, it's quick to forget. I think I'm quick to forget that at times, like, she's so ignorant when it comes to this stuff, because she's just never had any exposure.
But you don't think it would have come up in her studies in Camino with Nala Se or anything like that? I mean, I was a little surprised that she just never heard of it at all.
Yeah.
It seems like it would have come up at some point.
I was wanting them to have, one of the clones say the Rick Oley line about what Coruscant was. When he's talking to Anakin, he's like, "Oh, the whole planet's a city." Like, I wish they would have put that line in there too. But again, that's why I'm not a writer and I'm doing this podcast. And so
you make me feel great about myself. Yeah.
You're welcome. So it's no big deal. Covert data extraction mission, right? We're only going to the capital of the Empire, aborting one of the vendors that's used by the highest ranking military person, and stealing some data off there. But no big deal. Should be easy for you guys. Yep. It was funny too. Echo, like, they're all still thinking about it. Echo's like, "Well, Rex is here. He told us we got to go. Let's go." He doesn't even hesitate. He's just going to do it.
Didn't ask permission. Just said,
"Nope."
Hunter, we're going. He looks at Hunter. Hunter's like, "All right, well, I guess."
Yeah. Okay, so then we get this the rendezvous with Rex here. Again, confirmation that the ID had been wiped. The clones were killing clones. He tells them about the log. It's on the Venator, right? And then they say that the vote's going back to the Senate tomorrow, which I'm like, okay, so
didn't we just table this thing, and it's been tabled a bunch of times? Now it's going to be. Yeah.
This Senate has so many problems that have nothing to do with representation. It's all in the bylaws and how it's set up. Like, it's a hot mess, man. Like, you can't defer for one day.
Now you've bored me with politics.
Okay. Why would you wait a day? Like,
well, and just it completely.
Are there no sessions?
It's a flip of like 180, like from where they left it, and all of a sudden now it's got to be up for a vote, like definite vote.
Exactly. Yeah,
like
nothing's changed.
And all it takes is a second for anything to pass in the Senate too. Like, you only two out of the thousands of seats in the Senate. It only takes one person to suggest it, and another one to say, "Yeah, I don't like that." Yeah, I mean, that's all it takes.
Okay, so we're having fun with the Senate, but really, it's just this is your first time listening or watching, we actually do like Star Wars. It's just funny that this stuff happens. That's all. We love it. Okay, so the vote's going back tomorrow. Omega is going with Chi-Chi. I thought that was a really good idea. And once again, we have a situation where Omega is being influenced by these very high-powered people again, right? Or influential people in some cases. Somebody like Chi-Chi. I mean, who else gets to go to the freaking Senate and be there and be part of this all? And I just wonder, like, this is so fascinating. Like, the more and more this happens, and I said we were going to do a Patreon show at some point of like, why is Omega special? And I think this is part of what that discussion is, how much exposure she's getting in such a rapid amount of space, short time of space, and how that's going to mold and shape her to be the person who we know she's going to be, because Filoni's not going to let her go. She'll be out there somewhere. We don't know yet, but it's just fascinating that she's gotten this opportunity. I'm glad for her. Like, this is really great for her to kind of see firsthand how the Senate operates, what Coruscant is, right? She sees all the injustices that are happening. I mean, hell, she was walking next to Bail Organa of all people. So what did that do to her?
Were you a little surprised that when they bump into Rampart?
Yeah.
Hey,
wait a minute.
He didn't even he didn't look down at her though, as what I've noticed. So, but still, you would have thought that he would have recognized her maybe a little bit. I couldn't remember if they had been in the same room or anything like that in season 1.
Well, coincidentally, that day, there was a deleted scene, but there was a field trip that was happening, and they were taking children from a local Coruscant school. And so it just so happens that she was using that as her alibi to have to walk around with her. So
they were going to a STEM program field trip that day.
Yeah.
Get it?
Okay.
STEM.
Oh boy, we've gone off the rails here. Where are we at? Oh, okay. So yeah, he says, I can be your,
Go ahead.
I can be your witness, right? Claiming that I'll be the one that Echo says that, which I'm like, Echo, you're not gonna.
Right. And Hunter and Rex put the kibosh on that one pretty quick, saying, we're deserters. No one's going to listen to us. We're going to be seen. We're going to be put down on sight.
You're more machine than man. Why would they believe you?
Right. And again, they said this beforehand too. Like, they believe we're dead. And Hunter's like, I'd like to keep it that way.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I would. Yeah. That's smart of him.
Hunter's always the voice of reason.
He does.
That no one cares about or listens to anymore.
That's true. He's like the dad, basically, of most families sometimes, or the mother of some families. The parent, how about that? But Omega is going with Chuchi. Tech talks about. I love that he was like so quick to say, "Oh, that won't be a problem, right? I'll shut down the security stuff. We can get in, no big deal." We get the
well, and he gives her a chip too for identity. Yeah, like he did in the last episode.
Yep. The line, then let's get to work. We get that from the trailer, which was kind of cool. We finally saw that one. I'm always looking out for these moments in the trailers, like, oh, checking the box. That's it. Okay, so then we get that run in with Rampart. This is what you were talking about. A little awkward there that he didn't recognize her. And then this is where Masabeta really gives him that warning, like, this is it. Like, you're on, borrowed time at this point as far as the Emperor and Tarkin's concerned, which at that point I was thinking, man, this may not go very well for him. Like, what happened? I was not expecting it to go the way it did. But at this point I was starting to feel like, whoa, there's some, the stakes are actually there, right? That something could happen to him. So we talked about Omega being in the Senate. This is kind of where she's got this, wondrous look on her eyes the entire time as she's looking over everything. Okay, I won't get into my show notes because it's more about how was the Senate broken up. So let me just fast forward a couple pages here. So, and then she tells Omega, can you keep a secret? Which leads us to Bail Organa. So she's, rubbing elbows with Bail Organa. And then Bail wants Chuchi to speak to someone if she's willing to go with this. And so we get to Halle Bertoni, right?
Can I just say that's the worst Kaminoan name ever?
I don't even know.
It doesn't make any sense. It sounds like an Italian mobster.
It does. Halle Bertoni, the former senator from Camino, who was in the Clone Wars. She's actually, I pulled it up. I remembered her from this book. This is the Tales of Light and Dark. Yeah, the short stories for the Clone Wars. There's a story in here where she's in there with Padme, and it's oddly enough, I forget what episode it's in between, but they're talking about when they're buying more troops, and they're buying like 5 million more clone troops, and Padme's trying to get funding, and that's why I fell asleep in that story. I remembered quickly why I didn't read the rest of it. But she's got a role in that book too, if you're a fan of hers. But she's not. I think her character is very consistent. Like, she's not really the greatest person. I mean, I'm not saying that in a bad way, but she's kind of like whatever. So maybe she is kind of like an Italian mobster. I don't know, but
actually, what's really funny, and I'm sorry, it's going to take us out of the moment yet again. She reminded me of like my piano teacher when I was a really small kid. Like, she just like the way that she talked and the way that she was always just kind of halfway ignoring what you had. Of course, mine had bangles and everything, so she'd bang on the piano, which you're not supposed to wear when you play piano and stuff. But anyway, I was having like a traumatic flashback.
It was had a martini in her hand. It was just a weird situation for me. But
yeah.
Okay, well, no,
probably I could smell her. Like,
yeah.
it was really weird It's just like when you're in some situation, like all of a sudden all these things come back to you, and you're like, wow, I'm damaged.
If we do a promo for this episode, please use this segment. I think this is probably the most intriguing segment that we've had.
A peek
so far.
into my life.
Uh-huh.
You can't. Yeah, there's no refund. Sorry.
Okay, so then Bale tells her to follow the money. It always leads of trail, right? So we kind of move on. So she finally gets with.
Familiar. That sound familiar too. That was
where was that from?
That's basically Andor in a nutshell.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which again makes a lot of sense because in this scenario,
yeah. Oh yeah, I didn't. Dale said Halliburton is one of the biggest U.S. War profiteers. It does sound Italian though. Halliburton.
Oh, I didn't even make the connection.
I don't know if that's well, and it makes sense because that's exactly what she was. Like she was the one that was profiting from the war in the Clone Wars episodes, and in this story, she's trying to push to buy like $5 million because she gets kickbacks or I don't know whatever that was going on there, but. Yeah. She was definitely trying to profit from the war. And
clearly she belongs on the finance committee. Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's makes sense. Why would you not have her there?
Yeah, why would you? No conflict of interest at all to have a Kaminoan sitting on there.
Uh-huh. There, I don't know if it was a missed opportunity. I need to go back and watch, but there was a moment there when Halle Bertoni walks up and you look at Omega and I thought, I wonder if she's thinking about Nala Se. And it made me think of Nala Se because I'm thinking, like, where is she? Like, we're halfway through this and we don't know anything other than she was taken at the end of season 1. But that had to be kind of spooky and eerie for her to see. Because she looked at Nala Se as like, a mother figure, right? Of some sort. And Nala Se protected her. We have to keep that in mind. So she does have she's a good person.
Well, and who was the other Kaminoan one? The one that died? Yeah, with Cad Bane.
I don't know anymore.
But I mean, again, she gets very passionate though. Like, what about all the people that died? Not just the clones, but what she's angry about. I was really glad that came out. Mm-hmm. But also everybody else. And again, we finally learn and confirm the scale of the Empire's atrocities here. That, like you said at the beginning of the show, this wasn't just taking out Tipoca City. It was taking out all of the major city platforms around the globe. And so now there are only a handful of Kaminoans across the galaxy. I mean, handful, we don't really know exactly what that might actually translate into, but there are not many. The few are scattered. And what's really weird is usually when that happens, usually you have this sense of, personal responsibility to continue the legacy of your people, right? Repopulate basically. Yeah. And she's like, nah, bro, I'm good. Like they could just, we're all good. I mean, this is the Kaminoan culture though, unfortunately, that we presume is pervasive throughout it, where it's all very individually driven rather than community based.
Yeah. It's all about, making money, quick profits for yourself, getting ahead in life as best you can.
Right.
Real snobby people. They talked about Lama Su being too confident, and that no one believed that the Empire was going to take care of them, but he certainly did. And I think he would have reason to. I mean, they were flooding him with all kinds of money and orders for clones. So I think that makes total sense. But yeah, I mean, the takeaway from this scene really is just the fact that Omega is so passionate about what's going on, right? We don't see that so much from the clones. And I know we've talked about at the end of season 1, and we were talking earlier on in the season about if this was to ever come out, which it has now, what that would mean to the clones. And I think the jury's still out in terms of what that's going to look like. Maybe we'll see that happening here in a few episodes. But yeah, for Omega, it was very personal. It was her home. This was her people. It wasn't just the clones. It was the Kaminoans. And she's not a Kaminoan, and yet, she's got that fight in her for it, right? She's talking about them as well and the atrocities that happened to them. So I think for Bertoni, it's like, who are you? Like, why do you care so much kind of thing? But that's Omega, and more on that when we get to the Patreon show.
There we go, Dale. Thank you. Tonway.
That's the one that died. Circle gets the square. Okay, so you said this in one of the episodes, and I forget where it was. But you said, does that look like a matte painting to you? And for whatever reason, when that camera was coming down and we could see the Venator like sitting there on the cinder blocks or whatever it was that they had it on, it looked like a matte painting to me.
It did look like it was straight out of Empire Strikes Back.
Or Return of the Jedi, right? Yeah. Either one, take your pick. But it did look like that. And I don't know if they did that as a throwback or to a callback to those or what, but
it may have just been the shading, the way they came across on screen. It would be weird for them to do something like that arbitrarily.
I would love if they did that though.
Oh, yeah, I would too, but it would be weird that they would. But
yeah,
it was
why
cool.
would they?
Yeah, I got caught. I was like, man, what is off about this?
Yeah.
So I didn't put it together until you put it in the notes. I was like, oh yeah.
But go watch it if you think I'm crazy. Well, don't answer that. But if you see that, let me know because it can't just be me. Okay. But this is where they're kind of making their way to the Venator, and Rex explains that more and more of the clones are waking up to a lot of this, and this is where like my head starts going, "What in the heck?" There's a lot. Because at first I thought the scale was onesie twosies here and there, but it sounds like this is a pretty big deal. And not to bring this up again, but how does this scale? Right? How are they going to keep up with this if it with millions of them out there potentially waking up
right
at some point? And then he says, Rex needs more help. And then this is really kind of a setup for Echo. They clearly signal this. If you look at Echo, he's kind of like, they pause, he's thinking about it. And then he kind of looks down like, oh, I guess that's me kind of thing. So he's going to
he's chomping at the bit too. I mean, again, there's probably a bit of a struggle there about what the right decision is, leaving his new family. But yeah, clearly it was a no-brainer there that this was going to happen.
I enjoyed the callback to season 1, I think it was, where he says we improvise, or maybe it was
Clone Wars season. Yeah, this goes back to season 6, the last episodes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Clone Wars
take a page. We improvise.
Right.
Well, that was cool. Wrecker was scared of heights. They're making their way on the ship. That was all good. I'm glad they brought that back. It had never really, I can't remember, other than the first time it happened, it hasn't surfaced much at all. It did it did earlier at the end of season. Well, it was, season 1. But anyways, the fact that they're staying consistent with that was good. And then it becomes a tech show. Like everything from that point on, it's all tech, right? He's the one that takes control of the ship. He gets them into the Venator, gets the exterior hatch open.
He gets to fly the escape pod.
Yeah, makes that comment about I was off by 6.4 meters. Not my best day, or not my best, or whatever it was. But yeah, and then I started thinking, well, then do we really need Echo? Because he's got a screwdriver, so I don't know that.
Hey, he was bringing a lot to the team here. He was plugged in this time though, and he was making stuff happen. So way to go out on top, buddy.
You put the screwdriver up. Don't put a thumb up. Yeah, he doesn't have a thumb. Just put the screwdriver up. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. I love Echo, but it's just like he's had a really rough time trying to give him. They put him on the guns at least on this one.
Right.
Hey, you're not doing anything. There's no screws that need to be tightened down. Go fire off one of those cannons, will you? Make yourself useful.
And he did. He took 2 out.
He did take 2 out. That's fair.
Told you, redemption.
Okay, so and then here we get into that whole thing I was talking about, where like aside from the music, which I felt was like I really wish they would have done more here. But they've been so amazing all season long. It's hard to knock them on this, but yeah, he's like, we're going to execute plans 14, 5, 86, right? Gets on the cannons. Wrecker's doing his thing. Tech's doing his thing. Hunter's not doing anything. But it was really cool to kind of see them.
Calling out the numbers. That's his full-time job.
Right. He just calls the numbers. But it was really good to see them just operating like that, because I've missed that. We have never gotten that. And I wonder now with Echo leaving, are we going to get a little bit tighter? We are naturally, because it's a smaller team now. And now it opens up the door. The bed's now warm, as Dante said earlier, for Crosshair to return. But it was kind of cool to see that. And I think I had missed it, honestly. But any thoughts on the battle there? Anything I missed that you want to?
No, I think he covered all of it. Okay. It was good. I'm with you, though. It was really cool to see the team kind of back in action, doing what the Bad Batch does best, kind of beating all odds. Again, stunning everybody in sight.
Yep.
But yeah.
And then
it was fun though. Yeah, being resourceful, all those good things that we expect from the team. It was kind of good to see that part of it back in action within a mission that actually meant something. I think that's the part maybe got buried a little bit, is that Wrecker says it himself. I'm tired of waiting on Sid, right? That was his explanation for wanting to go on this mission.
Yeah.
But again, I think for the rest of the audience, it was kind of the same thing, or something similar. Like, okay, a mission that actually means something within the larger context of driving the narrative and driving the show, and why do we care? And why should we keep caring about what they're out there doing, right? And so I think that was that was nice that we finally got that moment of a mission that matters from the state of the galaxy and of what we're interested in as viewers of Star Wars, Clone Wars, Bad Batch, Order 66, all that good stuff.
Yep. Okay, from there we get to the, I guess the big Senate battle where they're talking about what's going to happen now. It sounds like Rampart is offering the provisions. It sounds like everybody's agreed with it, or I guess guess that one person that needs to has agreed with it. And so they're going to move forward with the, the vote. And, she's kind of stalling because the plans aren't there, right? The footage isn't there yet. And so we get into this whole thing about, there's money missing, and was it misappropriated versus was it, misused and all that. And it's just like they keep talking about it, but they never give us the answer, as we said earlier, about where was this money going. And again, we've already beat that horse to death, so we don't need to get into it anymore. But I just thought they spent so much time on it. And of course, Bale, they cut over to Bale, and it's like he's sitting there chomping at the bit, loving the fact that, Rampart's on the ropes here, and they're really kind of letting him have it in a lot of ways. And then finally, of all people, Organa, like, really, you had to make it him? Like, he's already got a target on his back. But
I know, right? How do you make it any bigger?
Well, this is one way to do it. He comes
really
forward.
He's still got another 15 plus years.
I know,
of this
like, how
too.
this guy. I mean,
how he survives, I don't get it.
He's like the Bill Clinton of politics, Slick Rick, or what they call him,
Slick Willie is what.
Slick Willie, that was his name, yeah. When he was in Arizona politics, but okay, that's a whole nother story. But
Arkansas.
But Organa comes forward with the footage, and then we get to see the footage, and of course, you can hear the shock and all that's happening across the Senate. And then, or anything before we get to this next thing?
It's more of a silly question of like, how do we have such great footage of them bombarding the planet, but we can't get footage at like Celebration from a camera phone of a trailer?
Again, I don't know. I don't know, Jonesy, but again, when you do the promo, please cut all of these pieces together, because this is what people
I'm not doing the promo. You're editing this.
Oh, that's right. I'm editing this one. Son of a gun. Okay. I'll have to figure that one out.
Right. We're going to shorten that. We're going to wrap this thing up.
Yeah, we got to go, guys. So
we're going to do this like
over
episode 6. Yeah, we're just going to start wrapping it up.
Editing this show. Okay. So then, I love the fact, like, I don't remember this ever happening, but there's this ominous bell that starts to ring, right? Warning everybody that the Emperor is about to appear. And in the show notes, I have, he's literally rising from what looks like hell. Like, he's coming up from hell symbolically from the ground up. And we know this is how it happens, but it never really kind of.
Did you notice that the Imperial symbol wasn't there yet, though? Like we see it in Andor. Like we saw it in Andor, right?
Mm.
But when we're looking at here, I noticed that it's just kind of a flat black. I mean, there's some lines and things like that, but it's really, there's no emblem there quite yet.
Yeah. I guess the marketing and branding team for the Empire hasn't really
they're still gotten
around to it yet. Yeah.
But contractors are in short supply right now.
They are. But yeah, I mean, the music was awesome. It was very different. It wasn't like the typical, Emperor music. We weren't getting any of that stuff, right? But it was good. I enjoyed it. And then, okay. Oh, by the way, did you notice who they focused on and yelled out, "Murderer"? It was a Gotal. They showed the representation of Gotals in the Senate. I'm not even kidding. Where's Risk?
Bad for our listeners
that fall asleep.
I feel bad for our listeners that really are playing a drinking game because they are smashed right now.
Gotal was, at least on everybody's card. But I mean, they showed him. So represent my boys up there, representing them in the Senate. Okay, so I got a question for you before we get into the whole speech, which I thought again was, if you just read it, it's kind of cool. It's not that impressive, but the delivery is everything. Right. But I got a question, and I know this has already come up from some folks, and maybe some folks are kind of jostling this around their heads right now, but even though they may not know it, the Emperor has always been somebody that we've said, they're always 2 steps ahead of us, right? Or he's always 2 steps ahead. And Rex says this a little bit later at the very end. Oh, we got played. He did the same thing, and we see this. Sorry. But I don't know. To me, part of this feels like this was not planned. Like this was him just seizing the opportunity. Like there was an opportunity here. He took advantage of it. He twisted it around. But I don't know that I believe, even though Rex said it, and I guess because they put a character now saying it, somebody like Rex, then I think we have to believe that he was. But up until that moment, I was thinking, oh, this guy is just awesome. Like he's manipulative, and he's a forward thinker, and he's using the Force, and he's doing all these wonderful things to kind of make himself better and put himself in better positions of power. And everything's going, quote, as planned. But I just don't buy that this was ever on his radar. He's just an opportunist, and he's a very good one. I think that's how he got into his political seat with the help of the Force. But I think it's both. I don't know. Am I crazy, or is it you
No,
just giving him?
what's the old adage about, preparedness? I mean, fortune favors the prepared, or I mean something along those lines, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's a lot of what the Emperor does, is that he puts enough scenarios that he's going to win most of those. And then the ones he doesn't, he kind of looks, okay, there's still an angle that we can turn this around and spin it a different way. And since he has no loyalty and no, and no connection to any of these people, when they turn around, this is a scenario. It wouldn't surprise me if he actually did have this planned, of if it were to come to light, because this has been a risk for a while, and Rampart has been slow to get the bill. They know they've got loose ends. They don't trust the clones. There's all of these things kind of go in play. The Emperor's probably been working an angle. So what Rex is saying is probably a bit, it might not be 100% true. But I think in general, the idea that he is always working on an angle and able to adjust quickly and put themselves in a position is 100% true, to where it always feels like you can't get in front of them, because he is constantly evaluating all of the different scenarios and the situations and how he wants to handle them, so he can go straight to step, to option D if he has to, because A, B, and C aren't going to work out. And he's that good. And you could bring it back to channeling the Force. So I just finished listening to Shadowhunter that Lauren did a review over on the YouTube channel for. And it was the same type of thing. Like, so Maul is chasing this guy, and him and they think they've got it all wrapped up, but the guy survives. But Maul is going to meet Palpatine, but Palpatine's just kind of chilling in his senatorial garb, and all of it plays out with him being the senator, and that's how they get back the holocron, all the secrets, right?
Yeah.
So it was just still, is that just dumb luck, or is that opportunist, or was that him figuring things out ahead of time? And while that's Legends, it was still very appropriate, because it kind of felt like the same situation here of, it's a scenario, it's a path. Am I ready for it? And then, something changes, and the disturbance in the Force triggers me to say, yes, I need to go do that option. These other ones aren't going to work.
Yeah.
And so that type of thing. And then, of course, when he sees it playing out, he could be like, all right, well, time to come in and save the day, make everyone feel good about themselves.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like that explanation a lot, because I think that it's more pragmatic and practical rather than, relying on the Force. He's just a planner. And yeah, you're right. I mean, that risk is always out there. And so somebody like Palpatine, you're right. He would have planned several options on how to handle it. And maybe this was just one of them, and he took advantage of it. So I think
compare that to episode 1, right, where the impulsivity of the Queen caught him off guard, right, in Phantom Menace, of what, her going back and engaging the Gungans and things. He wasn't anticipating that, because he kind of took her for granted.
Yeah.
In that regard. So I think that was also a lesson learned there about, you have to assume some of these other things might happen. And so we probably learned a lesson all the way back to the Phantom Menace days.
What parts of the of the speech stood out for you? Was there anything that you really sunk your teeth into?
Oh man, I think the part where, gosh, just when he started to spin it was like, oh man, that just felt really good. And you probably got the exact quote. I don't
have the whole thing
in front of me. Yeah, but when he started to spin that and make it seem like, one thing is clear, that this treachery, but again, you've got the quote.
He says, the fact that the clones under his command so blindly followed orders, inflicting such carnage without hesitation, gives me pause.
Yeah, exactly. So right there, that gives me, so he sounds reasonable, right? He has effectively baited everyone in, acknowledged their concerns, and says that I'm concerned about this now. But again, all of that was in service of what Rampart wanted in the first place. But now you've taken all the people who were against it, and maybe the people that were on the fence. As we know in our politics, it's all the people that are in the middle that really need to kind of choose one way or the other. They swing things so wildly, right? The undecideds, if you will. And so those are the ones, as soon as the Emperor shows up, which he hasn't been doing, shows up and speaks and says, you know what? It's concerning that they just blindly did all of this stuff.
Yep.
I think the time is so appropriate that we should probably, and we really do need to make a change, just with the heavy heart, type of thing, that we need to make it go to a different path. He really sells it,
So I don't want to read the whole thing, but maybe I will. He says, like, he starts off with like, oh, I'm deeply concerned by this recent revelation. Baloney. My gratitude to Senator Chuchi for exposing a rogue element within our ranks. Like, he's playing to, Senator Chuchi now, which he's like, oh, okay, he's listening to me. And in
he's
fact, you look at
validating everything that's going
exactly
on around him. Yeah.
Yep. And then you look at Omega, and she's got this like, oh my God, he's here to save us. Which
Right.
you know, she's probably a lot of the senators and a lot of the people in the audience thinking the same thing. Many lives have been lost, but I assure you, Admiral Rampart will face the consequences for his treachery. However, he did not act alone. Then he goes into the quote, the quote that I mentioned. But then after that, he says, perhaps it is time for a change. Like he opens it up as though it's a question, although it's really not a question. He's going to make
like
it.
he's considering his own options.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's baloney. But and then he goes into what was for me felt very familiar to the speech that he gave to get the clones started.
Right.
He says, you know, perhaps it is time for a change. Now more than ever, building a strong galaxy requires protection and security. Again, in the fear of the unknown, and again, echoing things that happened in our own U.S. politics about the scare tactics. Think back to was it 91? The war in Iraq. Right prior to that, you know, we had all these weapons of mass destruction, and there was all this fear. And then we get there, and there were like nothing there. Like it was just, I mean, not that it was used in purpose. I don't want to say it was, I'm going to get into whether or not it was used intentionally to start a war or to get funding, but but that fear is what he excels at, right? That's what the dark side is. He's just
similar speech with Order 66, right?
Yes,
you know, I'm scarred, right?
I'm scarred. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly
the Jedi have betrayed us. All these things, yeah.
He says, due to the nefarious actions of Admiral Rampart and the immediacy of the bill on the floor today, is my opinion that the legislation is our future. With this and this is the part, with this momentous act, we shall usher in a new era. I mean, that is almost lifted from Order 66 speech, right? Heralded by the Imperial Stormtrooper, which I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I love the fact that they put a stamp on that and said, this is how the Imperial Stormtrooper was officially made canon or officially, you know, birthed at that point.
And it's an official term, not a colloquialism or something like that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, still, I would hear the word stormtrooper. To me, that sounds like a pretty scary terminology, but maybe that's just because we're jaded with the Holocaust and with the Nazis and all of that stuff, you know, but.
Well, I think it's also, I mean, it's, you know, if you have a galaxy, or if you have people that are scared, and you're using something that sounds scary, then it's fire with fire. So
yeah, it shows strength, right? Yeah,
yeah, it shows strength in the terminology. So I get.
And again, and the insurgents, you know, it's interesting. They use the word insurgent so many different times throughout this episode too. That we want to put these insurgencies down. They're threatening our stability. Again, everything comes back to that original speech when Palpatine ascends to Emperor, right?
Right.
And this is just definitely just building that momentum in the same way. And when you'd only hear certain things from him over time, that consistency and that power and that, it feels like that's someone I just want to follow, right? They're really looking out for us. That leader just inspires you in certain ways, you know, that confidence. You know, here's someone who's been through it all. You know, he faced the Jedi, you know, personally and survived.
Where's Mike? We got to get Mike's take on this. I wonder if he watched this episode. He says he didn't. I guarantee he watched that episode, and you're listening to this episode right now. I know you are, Mike.
He watches all of them. Don't let him kid you. Yeah.
I'm tired of Star Wars. No, you're not.
Yeah, he wants to know when he can complain next.
Okay, so then we get the meeting after the meeting, the debrief of what had happened, and this is where Rex is going, you know, he's 2 steps ahead of us once again.
Got us again.
Yep, kind of thing.
It wasn't for you.
It was a trap. Right. And that he got what he wanted, right? He got the approval from the Senate. He got everybody to buy in. And then, you know, we get the Chuchi saying that she's going to fight for the clones at this point. You know, she looks at Omega. I love that she kind of squatted down and looked Omega in the eye and said, you know, I won't give up, you know, addressing her specifically. Right. So I got a lot of questions around where Chuchi's future lies and whether we'd see her anywhere else. Because, I mean, she had a lot of time, all things considered. A freaking whole episode in the first one, and then some time here as well. Got some questions about where, you know, she's going to go at this point. And then we chorus we end with Echo's farewell, which was kind of a tearjerker. I know you mentioned that earlier. I mean, I didn't cry, but I was sad. It was I was more upset for Echo or for Omega than Echo. I mean, Echo doesn't give you a whole lot.
No one even told her. Everybody else knew what was going on except her. I just felt so bad for her. Like, how much progress have they made though as a team where they've all, you know, they're trusting each other, they're part of the team, all of this, and then they don't tell Omega what's going on. And granted, you know, they probably didn't know how to. I mean, and they're all kind of figuring out how to be dads and brothers as a brother to a child, you know, in in this kind of way.
Yeah.
But still, it just felt crummy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. She's like, best of luck with what? Like, she's like, what's going on here? Why doesn't anybody, I don't know. Guys, she's like the empath of the team.
Right.
You got to be more sensitive. Like, read the room, man. Not the way you handle it. But yeah, I mean, like, we've already kind of talked a lot about this, about whether it makes sense. I think it does. It makes 100% sense to me that he would take this opportunity to go back with Echo or go back with Rex. I think it does open the door, quite literally, for Crosshair to come back, which I still predict is going to happen at some point. I don't think he's gone or lost. I don't know how we get there, but, you know, now there's an open bed. So that's going to happen.
Now, the one thing I will say about why everybody else knew before Omega is that Omega was on her own, and these guys were all together, and they were just hanging out while all the stuff we were watching in the Senate. So there was time where they had time to figure out what they wanted to do and talk about it, so that she would be the last to know in that scenario. I guess does make sense. Now that I think about it.
Okay, maybe. I think it's more they're not thinking about those things as much as they've grown and they know Omega and love her.
I think it's a bit both. Well, I bet you they did. Like, how are we going to break this to Omega? But the conversations just kind of happened naturally once that part of the mission was over. Like, guys, this is what I need to go do. You know, and they support him, and they're like, well, how are we going to tell Omega? I know what we should do. We should all act like nothing's going on. Everything's fine.
Right.
You're just going on sabbatical here. Mm-hmm. And then she'll probably not even know. She won't even recognize it.
Yeah, he says that he's going where he's needed, and she says, we need you too. I was like, oh, you're breaking my heart here, chick. Right. He says, it's not forever. I'll be back. Keep up the good training while I'm gone, huh? And then...
why didn't he respond like, Han, we? What about you?
What about you? I don't know what you're talking about. You probably don't.
I should have been like, I need you too.
Yeah. And then she gives him the big hug, which I thought was really cute, because she's just like, I mean...
Has he ever been hugged in his life?
Him. No, he's never, I don't know if he's ever had a hug, but that's not just a hug. I mean, if you're a parent, you know what that hug is. And it's like, you can't even describe the feeling of what that's like.
He tells her
that was
keep
really
up
sweet.
Yeah, and he tells her to keep, I mean, he kind of did the best he could. Keep up with your training, you know, when you come back.
Yeah.
All that good stuff.
But is he going to come back, though? I think is the question. I think he will. I don't know that I don't think he comes back to the team. No. Yeah, I'm with you there. Will they meet up again? Yeah, I think so. Probably this season now, the way things are going, if we're on this course of, you know, freeing clones and saving clones, that becomes the mission.
Yeah, and if we're getting Cody back, then we're definitely getting more Rex and more Echo. Yeah. I mean, there's too many episodes left. There's too much in the direction we're steering now with the show. And it seems like we are on a very clear trajectory now. This is where we're going. It just makes way too much sense for him to show back up and for them to actually have a part. I mean, we had talked about, well, how many episodes would they show back up? We were like, well, maybe 1, maybe 2. I mean, now you're like, well, yeah, I mean, 1 or 2 sounds pretty good. I mean, you could always say more, but I think 1 or 2 really strong, detailed, like a lot of present show episodes seems very, very reasonable at this point.
Well, let's get into our final thoughts and questions. I've got some questions here, and we've kind of answered these organically as the show's gone on, but you know, what's next for Echo? When will we see him again? I think you and I are both on the same page here that he's going to come back this season. I don't think he's going to come back to the team. What that is, it sounds like it is going to be the mission for the Bad Batch and for Rex and Cody and Echo. It's even crazy. We're just talking about the characters like that, right? They're all together again, but kind of surreal. But yeah, I think that seems like where they're going. And maybe it's the first part of it happens now. I mean, we only got 6 episodes left, right? So, or 8 episodes left. Right. So, and there's going to be some episodes that may be Monster of the Week, Mission of the Week still. I would expect there to be some of that. So scale that down. I don't know if there's enough runway here to tell that full story. Excuse me. But maybe it is a part of it, and we get a cliffhanger at some point. We carries over into a season 3 of some sort, and we pick up there. But I don't know. Do you think there's enough time to kind of wrap this up and the liberation of the clones, or the I don't know what you would call it, the saving of the clones?
Well, I think a localized version of it. I think kind of like what we did with Crosshair. We had kind of a Crosshair specific episode. I could see where it's entirely plausible that Rex and Echo, we follow them and we get that insight that we've wanted and that we've been curious about of what it exactly they're doing to identify how they're communicating, how they're extracting, you know, what does that operation look like? And we spend an episode with them doing that. And that's just focused on them. And maybe this is how Cody comes into things, right? And that's how they're reunited. And then we come back with the larger group, you know, later on, to your point of something more akin to maybe the broader story with the broader clones and what's going to happen, from that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, it's very possible we could just get a solo shot. I mean, Dale's, kind of speculating here that the crossing might be Echo and Rex, and then for this next episode here, I think the next episode is called The Crossing, right?
Yeah, it is called The Crossing.
All right. So, I mean, so Dale's kind of got a theory there that maybe this is that we are going to go follow them, and we start to see what that crossover looks like, I guess, or the crossing from the enemy lines, if you will, or defecting and, whatever it is you want to call it.
Yeah. The
deserting, I guess.
Yeah. And the next question is what happens to the Bad Batch? Again, I think this is it. So we don't need to talk about that anymore.
A little more of the same until we come back to the.
Yeah. But the bigger question that I have now is the clones, though. And I don't mean, like, I get they're going to be rescued and brought to safe houses and whatever else that Rex and Cody and company are doing. But I just wonder if we're going to get that kind of, I want to call it a backlash, but certainly an uprising of some sort, knowing that that certain clones under the guidance of Rampart destroyed Camino. Do they feel that way? I mean, we talked about this. I think we can see both sides of it, where they don't really care because they're just soldiers, and that really wasn't, their planet. They were bred there and trained there, but they went and did other things, right? And then some of them may feel like Omega, where that's where I was born, that's where my family was, and that sort of thing. That's where my brothers were, and they killed all those folks, and our legacy kind of sunk when that happened. And is that going to cause an uprising and a stir? Is that going to accelerate the Empire's plans to put them down quicker than they anticipated, right? If they're kind of breaking ranks and, waking up out of these horrible dreams, all of this feels like it's compounding. So I don't know, they got a mess on their hands, I think, at this point, the Empire does.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things that go into all of that too. Is one, how fast can they spin up the recruitment bill, right? Or now that it's approved, how quickly can we spin this up and get people in the door and get them trained to phase them out? And then I think the other part is that the Emperor and company cannot be blind that they are having sedition happening with the clones, and that they are starting to question orders, that they are starting to defect, that they're starting to abandon and desert. They've got a problem, and maybe it's not widespread when you look at percentage wise, but again, it's a trend, and it is. Yeah. It seems to be picking up steam, and with all of the insurgencies across the galaxy, that's a huge concern. And that, again, to your point, that's why it feeds from point one, for me, is that if they can build that up quickly, even if underdeveloped, which would certainly lead to what we get in the original trilogy, right? From a quality of stormtrooper perspective, then you could see a mass killing, effectively, a mass put down of these clones, a decommissioning, if we want to soften the blow a little bit of this. But I mean, it's not looking good. We know deep in our hearts this cannot be saving the clone army. It's going to be saving a few clone individuals where we can. And there's just not enough people to do it. And they're not going to be able to save themselves, because the Empire, when they have the opportunity, they will do it. And they will be very, very sneaky about it and do something very dastardly, just like they did with Camino, to where they don't expect it. So that's going to be tough to watch. I mean, I'm not looking forward to it, although I'm super excited for it.
Well, you think about this. They gave out the first, 14, 15 episodes for people to watch.
Right, but not the last two.
But not the last two. The last episode now has a lot more relevance to me. What is it? Order 99? Is that what it was? Let me go look. I'm going to pull it up right now, because now I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe that is what we're going to get, right? At the end of the season, if that was I'm trying to pull it up here. If that is the actual last episode, if that's what it was called Tipping Point Summit Plan 99.
Plan 99, right.
But I wonder if Plan 99 is...
That sounds like a Bad Batch plan.
Oh, that's true. It does. With either way, I think you're right. I mean, I feel like it's going to get darker in that regard, because they can't have millions of these guys running around the galaxy. It just doesn't. The numbers don't add up.
Yeah.
So how they get there, I don't know. Whether we see that in the season, maybe we do. Maybe we see the beginning of it. But I'm for it. Like, I think this is great. I mean, it gives them purpose, right? They've got a new war that they've been asked to fight, and having them on the side of Rex and Cody, I mean, that's a huge advantage going up against the Empire, right? They're going to be out moneyed and out teched in terms of like the military might of the Empire, but what they don't have are the Bad Batch and just what they bring to the table, right? So like, there's nothing comparable, in my opinion, to that. So I think it's going to bode for a fair fight, but I don't think the clones are going to win at the very end of it all.
Well, and I just don't think the clones will be given a chance to fight, to be honest with you. It just makes it would be way, when you think about all of the canon that we've had, and nothing has ever suggested that there was a clone uprising. And that would be that would be the effectiveness of like the first Civil War. Before predating the Civil War, the Galactic Civil War, again, the original trilogy, and then a continuation or a different war, a different clone war. I mean, a real clone war, actually.
Yeah.
On that. So I strongly believe they're just not being given the opportunity, because I know that you believe this as well. They are so well trained, and there's no way you're going to get this new Imperial army set up in a way that anything approaching the quality that you have, even if your clone army is degrading in any kind of way, which there's probably an argument the effectiveness of the clone army is degrading.
They're
just
getting
due
older.
to age and ability, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just some natural things. But the way at the level they operate is just still going to be just not even close, not comparable at all to what the Empire is going to be able to train themselves.
Yeah.
And we saw this effectively with what they were doing with just their test programs. They still weren't quite up to snuff as to what the clone army is able to produce and what they're able to actually, deliver. So I just don't think they're going to be given the chance.
Yeah, they're kind of, the Empire is going
to be done dirty. Yeah.
Yes, and the Empire is. It's more like almost a Zerg approach, right? We can't match the quality, but what we can do is throw a lot of money at a lot of people and get people behind blasters and meat shields, and sheer numbers just overwhelm them.
Well, and again, now you have the pretense of, yes, we have all of these provisions outlined for the clones in order to give them a pension, which I just laughed at that we use the word pension in Star Wars.
Yeah.
We have a pension program, maybe a little bit of land, maybe, some of these things. You know what, everybody, why don't you all get in this chamber for me?
Exactly. No, that's exactly.
And that's the thing. They've lured, have they started to lay the groundwork to lure them into a scenario where they will mass put these guys down under the pretense of you are signing your papers to basically go through customs and then, say goodbye to your career, when really you're just saying goodbye to your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be gut wrenching when this happens, but prepare yourself now, because I think it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad.
Maybe it's not, but I think it is. Okay.
Completely contradict your optimism there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can end the episode there. Good episodes. I enjoyed both of them. And questions about whether it needed to be, 2, but whatever. It's fine.
I like the pacing on that.
I know you
really
like
well.
It's good. Yeah. Good. I think we've talked enough about the crossing, which is coming up here on next Wednesday morning. And I don't know. Beyond, I think I don't have any other theories on that. So I guess we'll leave it there. Before we get out of here, we had 1 billion people that joined us tonight. I don't know, not literally 1 billion, but my goodness, it was a ton of people.
We had as many clone troopers as we did listeners tonight, so it was great. Yeah, so huge thank you to everyone who came in the live chat. If you are listening to the show, cantinacast.com/YouTube if you'd like to go and see us live on the air, interact with all these great people in the chat, including Stephanie, Music Train, Rob, JJ Skywalker, Risk, Sky, Dale, Lauren, Dante, Sam Govan, Jorge, Alex, David Rogers, anyone I might have missed. We saw a lot of you in the background. Thank you guys so much for coming in. We hope next time you'll give us a shout in the chat, say hi, let us know. We do like to put people comments up on screen from time to time. Alex is calling us out for having a very depressing ending. Thank you. Yeah, you're very welcome, Alex. Glad we could deliver on that.
No problem, buddy.
Someone has to douse Albert's eternal optimism here. Glad it could be me.
Yep, it's usually
But yeah, so we'd love for you to come out and enjoy the show and get a little interaction with us. We love it. We hope y'all do too, and we would love if you subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell and check out some of our other content out there too. And especially Lauren, she's got 2 new Jedi novel archives out there. Shadowhunter, she's got High Republic comics, Yoda comics, which is set in the High Republic as well. Lots of great stuff. She's got more books coming out. We've got advanced readers stuff that she's already starting to record and get ready for y'all too in the next month. So lots of great stuff if you're into the books. I know we don't necessarily do as much of it as we would like to, but Lauren is knocking it out of the park. So please go support her. Check those. There's a whole playlist out for Jedi Novel Archive. Please go check those out. She's doing a great job. Support her. Leave her a comment. Let her know how much you're enjoying it.
Yes. Do all those things. All the things.
All the things.
Okay. We will be back on Sunday to do a Patreon show, which will be centered around something that happened here in these 2 episodes. I've got a couple ideas and thoughts about that, but it may be just, it may be the believer piece of it. I think that was the one that was the most intriguing to me, but you'll see that too. And then, of course, we'll be back next week to cover the crossing. With that, you guys have any final words before we get out of here?
Oh, thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.